Alright, so today I'm going to be talking about phylogenetics. What is phylogenetics? It is the study of evolutionary history and relationships among or within groups of an organism. These relationships are determined by heritable traits such as DNA sequences, amino acid sequences, or morphology. Phylogenies also reflect descent with modification. Descent with modification is the idea that species change over time, they give rise to new species, and they also share a common ancestor. So let's go over a couple parts of a phylogeny tree. You got the root, as you can see where the arrow is pointing to it. It is the oldest point in the tree and is said to be the theoretical last common ancestor of its descendants. But not all phylogenies have roots. I'll show an example later. A branch. This shows the path of transmission of genetic material from one generation to the next. As you can see in the picture, some of the branches have different lengths, and the length of the branch shows how much change has occurred from one generation to the next generation. Next, you have nodes. Nodes represent a branching point from the ancestral population. Clades is a monophyletic group, which means it is a group composed of a common ancestor. A couple slides later, I have a couple examples just to really go in depth on what a clade is, because it gets pretty confusing. And a taxon is just the individual species. So, a couple different types of phylogenies. As I stated earlier, some phylogenies are rooted and some are unrooted. As you can see here, sometimes when there isn't a root or a known ancestor, so you can test each outcome by pulling on an outgroup. Perfect demonstration to do this is you take the right image, which is labeled unrooted. Let's just say you place it on a table and it was some loose string. If you just grabbed point A and pulled it down, everything would be above it, and in that circumstance, A would be the common ancestor of all of those descendants. And on the left here is just kind of a graphic of a clade and what isn't a clade. And at the bottom right are just some more examples of how you can display a phylogeny. And each of those three are exactly the same, they just look a little different. So how many clades are present in this phylogeny? You can go ahead and pause the video and just go ahead and try and count up how many there are. Alright, so here it is. There's actually it's a great example because there's a pretty good amount of clades in this phylogeny. As you can see, the two camelviruses, they are a clade. Human viruses are a clade. I'm trying to make a different color just to make it less confusing. Pretty much the easiest way to tell if it's a clade or not is you just take some scissors and you just snip it right on one of the branches. Everything that kind of falls off is going to be a clade. And the reason the two whale viruses and all the other viruses are not a clade is because you look at the common ancestor, it is connected. The way for it to be a clade would if there would be something that rooted off from that common ancestor, which would make it a later common ancestor that everything evolved from. In this circumstance, the two whale viruses would actually be considered the outgroup. So here's a couple examples of real-life phylogenetic trees. This one is actually of humans. And it just kind of shows you, at the top, it shows you how age, like millions of years ago, how long it's taken from the first common ancestor to get to where we are now. And also, as you can tell, everything has been extinct except Homo sapiens, was displayed by an arrow. When it also shows we are common ancestors, or we share a common ancestor with Neanderthals, which I think is pretty interesting. Lastly is two more little examples here, because I think they're also pretty cool, is the evolution of a domesticated cat and a domesticated dog. As you can see on the left is a cat, and which we call our house cat, also shares a common ancestor with the European wildcat, which is pretty cool. But all of those descendants, like the Asian leopard, European wild, African cheetah, ocelot, they share a common ancestor with each other. But the jaguar, lion, and leopard and tiger would be considered the outgroup, and everything is descended from its common ancestor.